All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Christine Knox. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar, which will cover overcoming language barriers in your contact center. Presenting today are Wade Wyant, VP of Sales and Channels at Mediu, and Jeff Chase, National Sales Director at iTerpret. I'd like to begin today's webinar by going over a few housekeeping items. Your lines will all be muted, so all participants are muted on today's webinar. The webinar is going to be recorded, and that recording will be given to you after the webinar in an email. Please use the chat feature or questions feature option on your control panel to enter any questions throughout our presentation or any issues you might have. We'll be sure to answer these questions at the end of the webinar. Also, there will be some polling questions during the webinar. We appreciate your participation with those questions, so please answer those accordingly. And also be sure to participate in our survey afterwards. We really appreciate your feedback, so please make sure to fill out that survey. Again, thank you, and now I will hand it off to Wade.
Thanks, Christine. As Christine mentioned, my name is Wade Wyant. I'm Vice President of Sales and Channels here at Mediu. And I want to welcome everyone to the fourth and last webinar in our Mediu Education Series for this year, 2016. For those of you returning to this session after attending maybe one or all of our previous ones, I want to welcome you back. And for those attending for the first time, we're happy to have you. For those first-time attendees, the purpose of these Education Series presentations are for busy contact center professionals that want to learn about emerging trends and technologies, and because of their demanding schedules, we try to work to deliver these in 30 minutes or less. So today's presentation is focusing on a topic that's certainly becoming top of mind with contact centers globally, and that is the use of interpretation services. In today's presentation, we'll cover off on considerations when contemplating a multilingual approach to the call center. We'll discuss ADA requirements and the government regulations that are in place as a result of those requirements, and compliance in regards to those requirements and how these services can be a value add to your business and can be done affordably. So you may ask yourself, what's driving this need for multilingual services, or interpretation services? The answer is easy. We're in a global marketplace with hundreds of languages represented through customers buying and using goods and services all over the world. And you can see by this graphic, over 90% of the world doesn't speak English. Now, while this is probably not a news flash for most, it is kind of ironic that most companies still don't have a solid strategy in place to service their non-English speaking customers given the high numbers. So the basic question you need to ask yourself is, are my customers primarily global or local? And if they are global, how are you going to handle the needs of those customers that need to have communication in their native tongue? So that brings us to our first poll question right out of the gate here that addresses this. So Christine?
Thanks, Wade. I'm going to bring up a polling question for you, and it's, other than English, how many current languages make up your customer base? So I'm going to launch that poll and give you some time to answer. We have 1, 2 to 4, above 5, or you don't know. So go ahead and answer that as best as you can, and we'll share the results in a few seconds here. Okay, we'll leave 5 more seconds and we'll close the poll out. All right, great. So it looks like the top answer, 56%, is between 2 and 4. 22% is one language other than English, and then we're tied for you don't know, or 5 or more for 11%. So looks like most of the people are middle of the road. Looks like there's some opportunity to expand your customer base. So this presentation probably will be helpful for a lot of you. All right, I'm going to hand it back to Wade.
Thanks, Christine. So as you'll hear from Jeff Chase and iTerpret later in this presentation, he's going to expand on a lot of this. But one of the things he's going to talk about is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Most of you are familiar with that. It's been important to many disabled Americans by giving them access to products and services and a way of life that they might not have otherwise. Now, the ADA has made its way into the contact center by mandating compliance for the hearing impaired, for instance. So your company's compliance not only needs to be determined, but a plan needs to be put in place to remedy the situation if you're out of compliance. So from a business perspective, compliance will help open doors to a new market and potentially save you money and potential fees and penalties that you might experience if you're out of compliance. And like I said, Jeff's going to go through this in a lot more detail later on in the presentation. So why did we partner with Interpret? So, we continually evaluate here at Mediu potential partnerships to diversify our solution portfolio to our customers. And that said, the Interpret partnership made perfect sense to us. It's an emerging market that meets the needs of a truly global marketplace with customers speaking in their native languages. And we felt that Interpret solution was the best solution to meet that need and allow us to continue to add value for our customers looking to stay current and maximize their service levels to their customers. So three things make sense to us regarding this partnership. One is market demand for the solution. So as I mentioned previously, demand for the solution is gaining a lot of momentum due to the global nature of it. Interpret's ability to deliver interpreters in a rapid fashion is a clear differentiator among its competing solutions, and Jeff's going to expand on that in a little bit more detail later. And finally, price points that are attractive to the enterprise and to the mid-market, allowing our customers to deliver this solution at a cost that they can bear, and which is important, especially when undertaking such an initiative to expand globally. So now I want to hand things over to Jeff Chase. Jeff is the National Director of Sales at Interpret, and he'll take you through to the rest of this presentation this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, Wade, and thanks everybody for joining us. Just wanted to talk a little bit first about what Interpret is and what we do. You see on your slide that the first thing you're going to see is real time, and that's a term that really is our biggest differentiator. In the past, when people have looked for an interpretation or translation solution, normally it's later today, a couple hours, sometimes maybe tomorrow at 2:45, and people in contact centers know that just doesn't get the job done. And so we're able to offer an interpreter from our global network of people, and literally within seconds or minutes. For more common language pairings, we're looking at seconds, and for maybe more unique or less used pairings, we might be up to a minute or two, but we're really an on-demand, right now kind of a solution, which is pretty unique in the marketplace. We provide a network of social and certified on-call interpreters. Let's talk a bit about what that means. A social interpreter to us is somebody who's fluent in the language. And the next step, the next real differentiator, is somebody that carries particular certifications. They might be legal certified, they might be medical certified. And the key to that is these are interpreters that not only understand the language, but understand the components of what you do in your business to be able to explain to a caller on a contact center conversation a little bit more about the depth of what you're going to want to talk about. And an example I use, my sister is a French teacher. She's exceptionally fluent in both Parisian French and Quebecois French. You certainly wouldn't want her to explain to somebody your version of how to maybe install a software or do a repair on their appliance. And so that's a big differentiator for us. We use our own internal proprietary platform of an HD level quality video conferencing system. It's HIPAA compliant, and we're able to provide that obviously in both spoken and in sign language. If you look at the little picture on the bottom of your slide, you can see what that would look like in a video environment where we've got a physician, we've got one of their patients, and then we've got an interpreter in sign language helping them through that conversation. So that's a bit about what our program and our process does. Let's talk about how that can help you. And so when we talk to people in the contact center space and really in almost any type of business or organization, they're facing a growing demand in more and more languages. And so this is a real opportunity for you to get out in front of your competition, attract new customers, do a better job of keeping your existing customers by being able to communicate with them in the language that they're most comfortable. We can provide interpreters in up around 200 different languages and dialects. Even within a particular language, there can be significant differences in dialects. An example we ran into recently is a court translation for a court hearing where an enterprising defense attorney thought maybe that they could get a continuance because the translator spoke Spanish but not Nicaraguan Spanish. And in that situation, if we're presented with that, we're able to change out the interpreter, bring on somebody who speaks Nicaraguan Spanish and is certified to interpret legal conversations, and do that within a few minutes. And so we really see a growing number of languages and dialects that people demand, and we're able to meet. And then we're able to provide about 125 sign languages, and again, that's growing as well. People maybe don't realize in all cases that sign language isn't just one international language that everybody who uses it speaks in. There's really a sign language for almost every language, and to take it even a step further, if you and a friend of yours who spoke sign language here in the United States were to travel to Australia or to Great Britain, they learn very quickly that in Australia and the UK, they don't use the same sign language as we use here. And so we're able to bridge those kind of barriers as well, and really give you a chance to do business with more people and do it more effectively. And so let's talk about the benefit of that a little bit. The world is changing very quickly, and so this is, like I said, a chance to get out in front of your competitor, develop new markets, and not just in a global environment, but locally. Wade did an excellent job with that graph talking about how it's in the world now. English really is about 10% of the population in terms of the language people speak. But even locally, I had a conversation with a school district CFO in Des Moines, Iowa here recently, and that's not a place that people normally associate with huge diversity and a multilingual population. They have parents who do not speak English but speak a different language in that school district, totaling 51 different languages in Des Moines, Iowa. And so even if you're in a more localized marketplace, there are people out there who want to do business with you and should be doing business with you that are not English proficient. And so let's just kind of move from there and talk a little bit about the ADA regulations. Wade touched on that really well. In the background of this slide, you can see the specific verbiage of the ADA regulations and how the Department of Justice is enforcing it. There's a good summary on that same page that we've put on there in blue. But what does it all really mean in a sentence or two? Any business, any organization that deals with the public has to provide a sign language interpreter for people who are deaf. That's really, in the simplest of terms, the way that this is enforced. And obviously that's very difficult to hire and have somebody standing there just in case somebody were to want to do business with you in sign language. And so let's look quickly maybe at a couple of scenarios where companies have been cited for this. And these are three great examples because they're from different time periods and they're different sizes of companies. And so first we have the one probably the most people have heard of, which is the Wells Fargo one, and they were cited for not providing sign language to customers in their branches and within their contact center, and they've paid over $17 million. I think they're now closer to $20 million in fines, programs that they're having to fund for awareness and education. And this is something that's a couple of years old now. We've got one that's a little older and a little smaller. It's a company in Dayton, Ohio that didn't provide sign language for their benefit enrollment. And so they had an employee, or maybe more than one, I guess, that didn't speak or was deaf and needed to do this in sign language. And so they were sanctioned and fined for it. And then the smallest one and the oldest one, and to me the one that's most puzzling, a small driving school, single proprietor, and didn't provide sign language for somebody that wanted to take driving lessons. So I'm not sure exactly how that worked. I can't imagine being able to drive and communicate in sign language, so I don't know if that was a classroom situation exactly or how that worked. But the point of all these examples is it's not just the large corporations with the deep pockets. It's something that everybody needs to comply with, and so we want to be there to help make sure that you are compliant. And so now we're going to do another polling question and talk a little bit about that. Christine, I'll let you do that.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So the next question is your company presently ADA compliant? I'm going to launch that poll, and we have you're beginning your search, vetting vendors, implementing one currently, or have no idea. Okay, we'll wait 5 more seconds, so please enter your answer now. All right, I'm going to share the results, and it looks like the majority have no idea. So what do you think about that, Jeff?
Well, it's not surprising. Most of the people we talk to really aren't aware that this is something they need to comply with, and obviously it just seems hugely onerous to particularly a smaller business. The idea of just hiring somebody to stand there at the front door and deal with a person that might need to speak sign language just is beyond their imagination. So not surprising at all, but you know, it's today's reality. So let's talk a little bit about how we can break through some of these barriers and some of the specific situations where this is a challenge. Firstly, in a contact center environment, we deal with the challenges that the agents themselves have to face. Firstly, obviously, understanding customers in their own language. They have people calling in that if they're, you know, specifically an only English speaking or only English and Spanish speaking contact center, just being able to understand what the customers want, and in situations where they do have some type of a solution, getting a translator on the line and trying to maybe schedule that customer to talk to a translator in 2 hours or tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As a contact center operator, as a company, some of the challenges that they face are trying to provide reliable translation services and how to effectively integrate that into the customer experience. In a contact center space, there's a lot of work and thinking goes into really managing that customer experience, and how to integrate the translator into that is a big challenge. And then as a business, the high cost of having a full-time translator on site or hiring people specifically because they speak a language and then trying to integrate them maybe into a call center space where they don't have previous experience, and trying to maintain that customer satisfaction retention level that everybody is really trying to achieve in a situation where the customer doesn't speak your language is nearly impossible. So let's look real quick at a scenario where there's a language barrier. We've created a hypothetical lady named Greta. She's a German-speaking customer, and she's calling into a contact center and getting an agent, and that agent doesn't speak English. So it's not hard to imagine that that's a challenge, whether it's trying to service that client that maybe needs some sort of follow-up or additional information about their new product, or whether they want to buy something. And it's really cost prohibitive to hire a full-time translator when maybe that contact center gets one or only a very small number of calls in that specific language during a week or a month or any particular time period. And so what's the solution to this? Well, I think by now that seems a little bit obvious. qualified on-demand translator that specifically is able to help that customer, and to pay only for that amount of time that translation takes place and that customer interaction takes place. So a lot more effective and a lot less expensive, which is really pretty much as good as you can hope to do. Let's talk a little bit about how that creates an opportunity, and we have a really great one we're kind of working on right now with a Mediu client. They're looking at a really exciting opportunity, but it's in a language-specific environment where there's a very specific attempt to target a certain group of people who speak a certain language, and they frankly just don't have people that speak that language at all. And so the challenge they have is, do we hire new people entirely based solely on their ability to speak that language, maybe without contact center experience? How do we train them? How do we retain them? Are they even available in the geography where our current contact center is? And are we looking at having to build a whole new contact center where that language is more available and we might get a better pool of candidates? So really enormous costs and challenges. And obviously, again, the same solution is to put in an interpreter, a translator, only when you need it. That's not a 40-hour-a-week proposition in almost every case. They're able to pay for only the amount of time that they use, and not pay a full-time person to translate, or if people have used translators, a lot of times you're paying an hour or 2-hour commute times and minimum translation times. In this case, we work in a set number of minutes as an increment instead of hours, and so infinitely more effective and cost effective. Let's take a quick peek at how that really works. We have 3 levels of connectivity. Again, our translators can be all over the world. So if you need somebody that speaks Russian tomorrow, they might be in Moscow, they might be in New York, and they might be really anywhere. And so the way we're connecting with them is we've got people sitting in front of a computer right now, looking for an opportunity to do what they do for a living. And each of our translators has a specific profile that we put into our system that details the languages they speak, the sign languages that they might speak, and their certifications. And so when you as a client require a specific language pairing, maybe a specific type of experience or certification beyond just the language pairing, then that opportunity pops up on the screen of that interpreter, and they grab that because that's what they want to do, and that's how they get paid. And then in a situation where maybe we don't have somebody, in a certain language pairing, we might have literally dozens of people waiting, and in a more unique language pairing, we may not have people sitting right in front of their computers at this minute. And so they're going to get a text message. We have our own proprietary company. We own a text messaging company, and so that goes out to them, and they're able to go get in front of their computer and get ready to go. And then the third option that I think is important also to talk about is that we're able to pre-schedule the interpreters that you've found that you really like. And so if you've got a certain type of follow-up, maybe, for example, that you want to do with clients, and you need to do some outbound contact with them through your center, you can pre-arrange a specific certain interpreter if they're available, and maybe you get the one that really understands your business model the best and you've worked with in the past. We see this as an example outside a contact center, but in a probably a situation we can all understand, where teachers that are doing parent-teacher conferences with non-English speaking parents, they'll tend to want to use the same translator as often as they can, and a lot of times we'll schedule that one for a particular evening and maybe have 2 or 3 parents that use that language pairing. So it gives you a little more control over who you work with, and that takes us to our next polling question, a little bit about your language functionality right now.
All right, thanks, Jeff. So for our third and final polling question, we have, how are you currently managing deaf and non-English proficient customers and prospects now? I'm just going to launch that. Oops, I'm sorry. Just closed it out by accident. Well, I don't think I can share that anymore, so I apologize. But the answers were call them back within 24 to 48 hours. We have a full-time interpreter, and we aren't doing anything.
I think the one you'll find there, Christine, if I can make a fearless prediction, is really we work with people that build the IVRs for people that have one in their contact situation, and the call them back in 24 to 48 hours is probably the most typical. And in some cases that works, but if you're trying to sell something, obviously you've let a client go and look at other options. And so, you know, we really want to help customers make a decision now, get satisfied with their follow-up needs now, and you know, really, it's always better if we can take care of something now than tomorrow. So that's probably the answer you'll get, and that's how we can help you with that. So I think at this point we're going to go back to Wade here and let Wade talk a little bit about how Mediu can help implement all of this into your contact center.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So really we hope you learned a little bit today in terms of how offering your customers flexibility in language services can be a significant value add for them. For those of you attending that feel that this topic resonates with you, the Mediu Interpret team is certainly willing to engage with you on this solution. And I would say the best next step would be to schedule a discovery session, either on-site or it could be virtually, to determine your needs, your vision, your gaps in the areas of language services and/or compliance. In terms of the end state, the Mediu and Interpret, we're going to help you get there successfully, and we'll do that by leveraging a lot of the many years that we've got in the contact center space and our expertise from that standpoint, coupled with Interpret's best-of-breed solution. So at the end of the day, the customer is able to cast a wider net in terms of being able to effectively service their customers globally. Now, Christine will provide guidance in terms of how to reach out and connect to us at the end of today's presentation. But I do want to kick things over to her right now to conduct an audience Q&A and to wrap this session up. So, Christine?
All right, thanks, Wade. I'm sorry, everyone, for that last polling question issue. So if you look at your control panel right now, you'll see a questions section. Go ahead and enter your questions in there. We do have a few that came in already, so I'll go ahead and address those first. The first one here is, what languages should I consider implementing?
Jeff, you want to take that one?
Sure. If you've had feedback from your clients that they'd like service in a certain language, obviously that's your first hint. But in a lot of ways, it's not something that needs to be overthought, because we're able to provide an interpreter in really virtually any language. And so it's not like the old model where you have to go out and hire them and choose this language first and that language first. We can work with you to implement a pretty flexible solution and really almost any language without having to really plan out which one is the most important, unless you already know. So it's really not the challenge it used to be.
All right, great. Thanks, Jeff. Another question came in. It says, what's the best way to make sure we are ADA compliant?
Jeff, I'll go ahead and take this one. I think the short answer is to that is leveraging Interpret's subject matter expertise in the area of compliancy, right? They know whether or not, and they'll be able to determine whether or not you are compliant, because they know the laws, they know the ins and outs. I think the broader question too really highlights our joint partnership and how we deliver on these services together. By adding that subject matter expertise from the compliance standpoint and mixing in our knowledge of your IT infrastructure and architecture, we're able together to put a roadmap together for compliancy, so that we know that your IT environment will be prepared for the solution.
So it looks like those are all the questions. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. They can answer them in the questions section. If not, that's okay. Oh, actually, there's a question coming in, I think. Someone raised their hand. So if you raised your hand, if you want to enter your question in the questions section, there we go. All right. Looks like, how does PCI compliance work with this service?
It's a great question. Jeff, maybe we'll want to team up on this one. You know, we've got more than a few individuals on our professional services team that has dealt with PCI compliance. So we've got a couple of customers that come into mind that have put together a strategy around that through some of the various bolt-on solutions that we have. So you know, from that standpoint, we certainly have the expertise on the Mediu side for that. Jeff, do you have any thoughts?
I think that's really more of a technology question, Wade, and you've already touched on that pretty well. You know, as far as completing a transaction and getting that done, if that requires some interpretation help, you know, we can make that fairly seamless. So, great question, and probably something that you folks can turn over the initial stones on in one of your discovery sessions, and then we sort of build the answer from there.
All right, great. All right, so just wrapping up, I want to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. We look forward to helping you with expanding your customer base, including additional languages in your business. My contact information is listed on your screen, and you can go ahead and reach out to me via email or phone. Again, we appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to having you attend our next webinar in 2017. So keep your eyes out for the next webinar and an email coming from me shortly. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.